I've driven Interstate 40 for 17 years as a highway maintenance worker, and I can tell you with absolute certainty, people don't just die at mile marker 37. They're chosen. My name is Marcus, and what I'm about to tell you will sound insane, but every word is documented. Every detail is verifiable. And if you ever find yourself driving past mile marker 37 on that stretch of highway between Gallup and Grants, New Mexico, at night, don't stop, don't slow down, and for God's sake, don't pull over. The pattern started showing up about 8 months ago, though I didn't notice it at first. My job is to patrol the highway, document accidents, coordinate with state police, and report hazardous conditions. I work the night shift, 9 p.m. to 6 a.m., which means I see the worst of what happens out there. But mile marker 37 was different. In a normal month, we might see 3 to 5 accidents on this 50-mile stretch. Traffic accidents are tragic, but they're also random. They happen because of weather, mechanical failure, driver error, or a combination of factors. Mile marker 37 started having accidents every single week, not near it, not in the vicinity, but at that exact location. Mile marker 37. I mentioned it to my supervisor, Tom, during a shift briefing. "That's gotta be a coincidence," he said, barely looking up from his coffee. 17 accidents in 8 months, all at the same location? That's not coincidence, Tom. That's a pattern. Tom finally looked at me. "Then what do you think it is?" I didn't have an answer, so I started keeping records. Detailed records. I pulled accident reports, cross-referenced them with witness statements, checked weather conditions, road conditions, everything. 17 accidents, 17 different drivers, 17 fatalities. Every single one was a solo driver, no passengers, no multi-vehicle collisions. Every accident involved a single vehicle leaving the road at mile marker 37 between midnight and 4 a.m. The vehicles varied: trucks, sedans, SUVs, motorcycles. The drivers were different ages, different demographics, different backgrounds. But the results were always identical: complete loss of vehicle control, severe impact, no survivors. State police started taking notice. They increased patrols. They added warning signs. They even brought in engineers to check the road surface, the banking, the guardrails. Everything was perfect. No defects, no hazards. And still, every week, another accident, another death. I became obsessed. I started researching the history of that mile marker. I contacted the State Highway Department, the County Historical Society, local Native American tribal offices. I dug through old newspaper archives at the library, and I found something. A newspaper article from July 1976, buried in the microfiche archives. Cult ritual goes wrong, 7 dead in desert. The article described a cult called the Children of the Eternal Night that had performed some kind of ritual sacrifice in the high desert near what would have been mile marker 37. The article was vague on details, but it mentioned that 7 members of the cult died in a ritual mishap, and that the group's leader, a man named Vincent, had disappeared. 7 deaths, 7 souls. I kept digging. I found more articles. The cult had been active in the area throughout the 1970s. They were known for bizarre practices: midnight gatherings in the desert, animal sacrifices, something involving the Hungry Road. Local authorities had tried to shut them down, but without evidence of specific crimes beyond trespassing, their hands were tied. Then, in 1976, everything stopped. The ritual went wrong. 7 cult members died. Vincent disappeared. And the articles stopped. But here's what got me. The location of the ritual was described as along the old highway near the ancient crossroads. That ancient crossroads was now mile marker 37. I visited the county records office in person and asked to speak with the oldest employee they had, a woman named Patricia, who'd worked there for 43 years. "The children of the eternal night," I said, sliding the newspaper article across the desk. "Do you remember them?" Patricia's face went pale. She looked around to make sure no one else was listening. "I shouldn't talk about that," she whispered. "People are dying, Patricia. 17 in 8 months. All at the same location. All in the same way." She stared at me for a long moment. Then she stood up and walked to a back room. She returned 10 minutes later with a dusty file folder. "This was sealed," she said quietly. "County sealed it after the incident. Said it was a sensitive matter involving indigenous sacred sites. But you should see it." Inside was everything the newspapers hadn't printed. Police reports, witness statements, crime scene photographs, and a document titled Cult Activity Investigation, Classified. The children of the eternal night weren't just performing random rituals. They were trying to contact something they believed lived under the desert, something that required sacrifice to stay appeased. Vincent, their leader, had performed 7 ritual killings over the course of 3 months. All 7 victims were cult members who'd supposedly volunteered for something called the Crossing. Then, on July 17th, 1976, Vincent attempted his final ritual, his own crossing. He died during the ceremony. The official cause was listed as misadventure during illegal gathering. But the witness statement from a surviving cult member told a different story. Her name was Claire, and she'd written a detailed account of what happened that night. According to Claire, Vincent had spent months preparing for a ritual he called opening the door. He'd chosen mile marker 37 specifically because of its location on an old Native American trading route, what the tribe called the path between worlds. Vincent believed that if he could perform the ritual correctly, he could feed the hunger beneath enough souls to satisfy it for a generation. 7 souls to open the door, and then his own soul to seal it again. But something went wrong. When Vincent attempted to cross, to supposedly merge his consciousness with whatever lived beneath the earth, something pulled back. Claire wrote, "Vincent screamed, not in pain, but in recognition, like he finally understood what he'd been feeding. It pulled him down into the earth itself. We heard him screaming for 3 hours. By sunrise, there was nothing left but blood and a hole in the ground." The hole was real. It was documented in the crime scene photos. A perfect circle, maybe 3 feet across, in the hard desert ground. No explanation for how it was created. No tool marks. Just a smooth, dark opening. And according to the report, it sealed itself within a week. The ground hardened over it, and by the time investigators returned to document it further, there was nothing left but normal earth. I stared at those photographs for what felt like hours. "What happened to Claire?" I asked Patricia. "She left town, moved to California, I think. No one's heard from her since." "And the other survivors?" Patricia shook her head. "There were no other survivors, just Claire. Everyone else was dead, either from the earlier killings or from that final night." I left the records office with copies of everything. That night, I did something I'd been afraid to do. I drove to mile marker 37 at 3 a.m. The road was empty, completely empty, just me and the desert and the marker glowing in my headlights. I pulled over about a quarter mile before the marker and got out, flashlight in hand. The desert was silent, unnaturally silent. No wind, no animals, nothing. I walked toward the marker, my footsteps crunching on gravel. As I got closer, I noticed something odd about the ground. It looked different. The earth around mile marker 37 had a slightly darker tint, like it had been disturbed and then compacted back down. I knelt down and pressed my hand against the ground. It was warm. In the middle of the freezing desert night, that small section of earth was warm. And then I heard it. A sound like breathing. Deep, rhythmic breathing coming from beneath the ground, from directly under mile marker 37. I stumbled backward, my heart hammering. I got back in my truck and drove away, but I couldn't shake what I'd felt. That warmth, that breathing, something was down there. Over the next week, I compiled everything into a detailed report. I included the historical data, the accident patterns, the cult documentation, everything. I submitted it to Tom, to the state police, to the highway department. The response was immediate and firm. Tom called me into his office. "Marcus, I'm putting you on administrative leave, effective immediately. I'm also recommending you see the department psychologist." "Tom, you've read the report." "I've read it, and so have 3 other supervisors and 2 state police captains. And you know what they all agree on? That you've connected unrelated incidents and developed an elaborate conspiracy theory. It's not a theory, it's documented. It's the ramblings of someone working too many night shifts," Tom said coldly. "Take 2 weeks off, get your head straight. When you come back, we don't talk about mile marker 37 again. Clear?" I was furious, but I was also terrified. Because Tom was right about one thing. I was obsessed, but not in the way he thought. I spent my 2 weeks off researching everything I could find about Vincent and the cult. I tracked down old phone numbers, drove to neighboring towns, interviewed people who remembered the incidents. One woman, a retired police officer named Helen, agreed to meet me at a diner. Vincent was charismatic, Helen told me, stirring her coffee. Genuinely charismatic. He convinced intelligent people to follow him, people who should have known better. "Do you think he actually believed what he was doing? That he was feeding something?" Helen was quiet for a long moment. "I think Vincent believed he was in communication with something ancient, something that had been waiting under that desert for centuries. Whether that something was real or a delusion in his mind. I never figured that out." "But the accident pattern," I said. 17 deaths in 8 months, all at the same location. Helen set down her coffee cup carefully. "Marcus, I shouldn't tell you this, but I've been following the accident reports. I get emails from the highway department. Professional interest, you understand. And yes, I've noticed the pattern too." My breath caught. "You have?" "I have. And I've thought about Vincent every single time. Because Vincent said something right before he died. According to Claire's statement, his last words were, 'It's still hungry. Even after I feed it, it's still hungry.'" "What do you think that means?" I asked. I think it means that whatever Vincent opened, he couldn't close. He offered 7 souls, and it took them. He offered his own soul, and it took that too. But the hunger didn't stop. It just adapted. Helen pulled out a piece of paper. On it were handwritten dates and locations, all of them mile marker 37, all of them from the accident reports. I've been tracking this for 3 years, she said quietly. It started small, 1 accident every few months, but it's accelerating. 8 months ago, you said, the pattern became weekly? Yes. It's feeding faster now, like it's growing stronger or hungrier. Helen, why haven't you reported this? Because no one would believe me, just like no one believes you. Because the alternative, that something supernatural is occurring, that a cult successfully opened a door to something from another realm, is too impossible to accept. She stood up to leave. But if I were you, Marcus, I'd stop going to mile marker 37. Because I think whatever Vincent opened, whatever has been feeding on those drivers, I think it started to notice you. She left before I could respond. That night I had a dream. I was standing at mile marker 37, and the ground beneath my feet started to crack. From the cracks, a voice emerged, not speaking words, but transmitting images and sensations directly into my mind. I saw Vincent's face, twisted in agony and ecstasy. I saw the 7 cult members walking into the desert, one by one, disappearing into darkness. I saw something vast and ancient and impossibly hungry moving beneath the earth, like a whale through an ocean. And it knew I was there. It knew who I was. I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. My phone buzzed. A text from Tom. Another accident at mile marker 37. Solo driver. DOA. You coming back to work tomorrow? I went back to work the next day. Tom was right. I needed to move on, to stop obsessing. But I couldn't. Not anymore. Because now I understood what was happening. Vincent had opened a door. The cult had fed it 7 souls. Vincent had fed it his own soul. But the hunger didn't end. It just evolved. It learned. It started calling to people, drawing them to mile marker 37 at specific times, compelling them to drive there at night. And every week, it took another one. The accidents weren't accidents at all. They were sacrifices, voluntary sacrifices by people who didn't even know they were being called. I started monitoring the victims more carefully. I pulled their information, where they were from, where they were going, their roots. And I noticed something chilling. None of them lived near the highway. They were all drivers passing through. People who had no reason to be on that stretch of road at that specific time. Truckers who deviated from their usual routes. Travelers who'd taken unexpected turns. They were being guided there. I couldn't prove it, I couldn't report it, but I knew it, so I did the only thing I could think of. I contacted Claire. It took me 3 weeks to track her down. She'd changed her name, moved to Northern California, and built a quiet life as a counselor. When I finally found her number and called, she almost hung up on me. "How did you find me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I need to know how to stop it," I said. "The hunger, whatever Vincent opened, how do we close it?" There was a long silence. "We don't," Claire finally said. "Vincent thought he could control it by feeding it. He thought if he gave it enough, it would be satisfied. But he was wrong. Opening that door was permanent. The only thing we can do is understand what it wants." "What does it want?" "It wants what it's always wanted, Claire said quietly. To feed, to grow, to pull more of our world into its own. Vincent didn't open a door to something. He opened a door from something, and now it's slowly coming through. How do we stop it? We don't stop it, Marcus. We contain it. And the only way to contain something that hungry is to give it what it wants in controlled amounts. That's what those weekly accidents are. That's what those deaths are. They're not tragedies. They're sacrifices. Necessary sacrifices to keep the hunger localized to that one stretch of road. That's insane, I whispered. Yes, but it's also true. And if you try to close that door, if you try to seal it, the hunger will break loose. It will spread. And it won't be satisfied with one death a week anymore. It will take hundreds, thousands. Claire hung up before I could respond. I never published my findings. I never went public with the story. Because Claire was right. Closing the door would be catastrophic. Instead, I made a choice. I transferred to a different district. I stopped monitoring mile marker 37. I let it be. And I've spent the last 2 years trying to forget what I learned, trying to live a normal life. But I still drive past that marker sometimes. And every single time, I feel it. That presence beneath the earth. That hunger. That awareness. It knows I know. And sometimes, late at night, I wonder if it's waiting for me. The accidents continue. One every 7 to 10 days now. Always at mile marker 37. Always solo drivers. Always fatal. State police have increased patrols. They've added more warning signs. They've even installed emergency call boxes at that location. Nothing helps. The hunger adapts. It finds new ways to draw people there. Last month, a woman drove off the road at mile marker 37. Her name was Jennifer. She was a mother of 2, just passing through on her way to visit her sister. The investigators found her vehicle wrapped around a cactus, and her body was discovered 50 yards from the wreck, as if she'd been pulled from the car. There were no skid marks, no indication of panic, just a clean departure from the highway, like she'd driven there intentionally. I attended her funeral. I don't know why. Maybe because I felt responsible. Maybe because I needed to see the real cost of what I'd learned. Her mother gave a eulogy. She talked about how Jennifer had been acting strange in the weeks before her death, how she'd mentioned dreams about the desert, how she'd changed her route specifically to drive through New Mexico, even though it added 6 hours to her trip. She'd been called, and she'd answered. After the funeral, I went to the library and pulled up the accident reports for mile marker 37 over the past 2 years. I searched for patterns in the victims' backgrounds, and I found something that made my blood run cold. Every single victim had visited a doctor or hospital in the month before their death. Every one of them had reported similar symptoms. Vivid dreams about the desert, unexplained anxiety, a sudden compulsion to travel. They were being marked, selected, prepared. The hunger wasn't just feeding on random drivers anymore. It was actively choosing its victims. It was reaching into their minds, planting suggestions, creating circumstances that would bring them to mile marker 37. Vincent had opened a door, but the thing on the other side had learned to reach through it. I've stopped going to work at the highway maintenance office. I told them I was retiring early due to health concerns. Tom didn't ask questions. I moved to a small town in Colorado, far from any major highways. I got a quiet job in a hardware store. I've tried to disappear. But last week, I had the dream again. The same dream I had years ago, standing at mile marker 37, feeling that vast presence beneath the earth. Except this time, the presence was closer, much closer, and it was smiling. I don't know how long it will take. I don't know if it will ever reach me. But I know this: whatever Vincent opened in 1976, whatever he fed with 7 souls and then his own, it's still down there, still hungry, still growing, and it knows my name. If you're listening to this, if you're ever driving on Interstate 40 near Gallup, New Mexico, please remember what I've told you. Don't stop at mile marker 37. Don't slow down. Don't pull over. Because the hunger is patient. It waits, it watches, and it's always looking for the next person to answer its call. The accidents will continue. The deaths will continue. And we'll keep calling them tragedies, accidents, coincidences, anything but what they really are: sacrifices. Weekly sacrifices to feed something that should have stayed buried in the desert, in the dark, in the spaces between worlds. Vincent tried to control it. He failed. And now all we can do is feed it, because the alternative, letting it out, would be far, far worse. Thanks for watching. I hope you consider subscribing for weekly videos.